Okay, welcome back. Continuing on page 576, talking about communications. So this is for your customers who might also be employees, right? And the type of change, hopefully you're not going to be doing like a hard cutover. But how much advance notice do you give them? This is a tricky thing. This is an awful lot of psychology in this section. Okay, if I told them a month in advance, oh yeah, by the way, on Tuesday the 14th, we're going to switch over to the SQL Server, and I tell them a month in advance, that's probably not going to work, right? Because no one's going to remember. So maybe a week out, you tell them, and then maybe the day before you remind them again, but not like a month out, because no one's going to remember or care. They're going to go, that's next month. I got things to do, all right? What is too much time? Yeah, that's tricky. I'm not sure I could answer that. And it has to be specific to the user, if at all possible. So, sales folks don't need to know that the accounting system that for payroll is going to be down. I mean, supervisors might need to know, and obviously the human resources people need to know, but don't send out a blast email to everyone telling them that some system they've never heard of and have never used is going to be unavailable. Okay. Now, let me tell you another one. Are you sure they're going to read this stuff? Really? I'm not. If I send out a note saying, okay, email's going to be down for an hour, I almost guarantee you're going to get a phone call saying, hey man, email server's down. You go, well, yeah, I've been talking about this for a week. I sent out something a week ago. I sent out something 3 days ago. I sent out something today reminding everybody. Didn't you read the notices? No, they didn't. Okay? It's spam to them. They don't care. Okay, I'm just telling you. This is reality. And remember the push and pull model for getting stuff? Push means I send it to them unsolicited, so they're going to think it's spam. Pull would be they would have to be interested and they have to go get the information. Okay, so there's some really cool things they talked about. Tips on submitting requests to a CRB, page 577. So the first one is, you better go to one of those meetings first. If the first time you show up at one of those meetings is to give your presentation, you're probably going to be a little off. You probably need to go to one and watch and listen, see how things work. What's the demeanor, what's the attitude, what's the technique, and just listen. And then you come back the next week and say, okay, I've got my proposal. That would be a good one. Understand the audience. Who really runs the show? Is there one person who's really the king bee or king, to the whole system? Do you need to be talking to them? Do you need to be appeasing their concerns? Okay. Have someone on the CRB review your stuff the first time. Hey, I'm getting ready to submit this. Does this look right? Okay, that kind of stuff before the meeting. Okay. And then keep it simple. Hopefully they have read this before. They've read your stuff, so don't read it to them over a second time. Discuss it with them. And then get buy-in for big things kind of early. The CRB is not the place to start talking about differences of opinion. Well, I think we need to do this. Well, no, I think we need to do that. That's not the place for it. If you have those kind of problems, we haven't figured out what the solution is, that has to happen off-site, outside the CRB. The CRB is for, okay, we're ready to do this, not to discuss options. Okay, so on page 579, they talk about the freeze period. We kind of sort of mentioned that before. Like, when are changes not allowed? So let's say you have an accounting system that has this gargantuan report at the end of every month. Then probably you do not want to do any maintenance during that time. Okay, makes sense? Don't mess with the payroll system right before payday, that kind of thing. In our world, we had like a year-end crunch. We were all running around like maniacs with our hairs on fire, working overtime trying to get these construction projects out. And please don't mess with us at all during that period of time. Okay. So they talk about team change. The principles are appropriate even if you're not using a CRB. So develop and test your change in a lab environment, right? Make sure everything works. Avoid weekends, one more time, right? And they talk about the reboot test, a shaded area, where they have, a change to a startup script. And the only way to find out if it worked is to reboot. So what you do not want to do is make a change to the startup script and then walk off for a couple weeks. And then later, 2 weeks later, somebody has to reboot the server for a completely different reason and the machine doesn't come up and they were not involved with the thing you did 2 weeks ago. And so they're thinking there's something that they did and they're off in the wrong direction. So the idea is, if you're going to make a change that may affect booting, go ahead and boot now. That way you're the one that caused the problem. Okay, kind of makes sense. So what happens if you have two conflicting requests? Somebody says, man, it's got to be due on Tuesday. Another guy comes up and says, it can't be done on Tuesday. No way. That's what the CRB is supposed to help you with. Do you have a revision history? Particularly for things like with a configuration file and, the configuration database guys, infrastructure as a code guys, keep track of all these changes. That would make sense. And there's some cool tools out there. There's Git, which is, a file repository system. You can just stash documents in there. Subversion is another one. Bugzilla is the one that I use. It's actually pretty doggone good. Okay, now let's talk about communication part of this thing one more time. Okay. We, system administrators, talk in different language than everyone else. Let's just give you an example. Let's say I sent a note out saying the Microsoft Exchange server is going to be down for an hour on Tuesday. And everyone goes, what the heck is that? Oh, well, whatever. It doesn't affect me. And then, hey, I can't get my email. It's like, well, I told you. And you go, you did? Because they don't know what Microsoft Exchange is. All right, phase 2. I sent a note out saying the email server is going to be down for 1 hour on Tuesday. And they go, oh, okay. And then they call up, hey, how come I can't get to my calendar? Well, because calendar is on the email system. Well, I know I wasn't going to get email, but I need my calendar. I don't know what meeting I'm supposed to go to. See how specific you have to be? These people do not know what these systems are. You're going to have to say, email, calendar, tasks, all the things, all this is going to be down. You're going to have to be very, very specific. You just can't say email server is going to be down or the Exchange server is going to be down. It's just not going to work, okay? You're going to have to be very, 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 very specific and generic. So know your audience when you're talking to them. And of course, even if you were as crystal clear as humanly possible, they're not going to read it anyway. Okay, I'm just telling you the truth, guys. They're not going to read it. And they're going to call up and say, hey, how come I can't get to the... And you're going to say, where the heck have you been? I've been sending notes out for the last couple of weeks. How do you not know? I'm sorry, that's just the way it is. Okay, we've reached the end of this chapter, and stay tuned for the next chapter.